And with the expanded meeting between President Biden and President Putin now over, we know that there was a number of high-stakes issues on the agenda today, including cyber attacks, military threats, and human rights concerns. But there could also be some room for agreement. This is something that the president said going into this that he was hoping to find, issues like climate change, perhaps. So joining me now for more on all this, Congressman Gerry Connolly, the chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, is here. He's also president of the legislative arm of NATO and a former Biden staffer when Biden was senator with the Foreign Affairs Committee. Congressman Connolly, thanks again for being on with us. So this is the first time, summits between Russian leaders and U.S. leaders are not new, but this is the first time that we've really seen cybersecurity at the heart of these talks. So how is the U.S. supposed to get anywhere on that issue if President Putin refuses to acknowledge that Russia is involved in these cyber attacks to begin with? We already heard Russian President Vladimir Putin saying that that's nonsense. So how does Joe Biden work with that?
Well, the fact that Putin wants to deny reality is not a new phenomenon. Remember, he denied that there were little green troops, Russian troops, in Georgia or Moldova or eastern Ukraine. That has not stopped the West and our alliance from imposing severe sanctions because of that malign activity. So that doesn't stop us. I really do think if we step back, one of the chief goals of President Biden is to reset boundaries for Putin. Donald Trump had no boundaries at all, apparently, for Russian malign behavior. Joe Biden's job is to reset those boundaries and be very clear about them, that there are penalties and consequences. And Putin is, at the end of the day, he can be delusional, but he also can be a realist, right? He needs to assess, how far can I go, and what must I do to sort of pull back? And cyber is going to be one of them. NATO has said cyber is increasingly going to be treated like territorial incursion under Article 5 of the NATO Charter. That's a really momentous kind of statement that puts Putin on the spot. And it's a laughable assertion on his part that he doesn't know anything about it and has nothing to do with it. Of course he does. And I think he has to understand that the stakes get higher and higher for him in ignoring that activity from his territory. So I do think that Biden's chief mission here on a lot of fronts is to reset boundaries for Vladimir Putin.
So what would you count as a win here in terms of addressing that cyber threat that Russia poses?
Well, obviously, a great win would be to get Vladimir Putin to say, yeah, now that you mention it, yeah, things are going on from our territory, and I'm going to put a stop to it. You can even monitor that. That's not going to happen. But remember, this is the first meeting. This is Joe Biden and Vladimir Putin taking assessment of each other now that they are each the heads of their own governments. And remember this, we've heard a lot of people talk about this is not Vladimir Putin's first rodeo, but remember, it's not Joe Biden's first rodeo either. He's met Vladimir Putin. In fact, he became vice president, people forget this, over Russia malign activity. When Russia invaded Abkhazia and Ossetia in Georgia, that was the tipping point for Barack Obama to decide to pick Joe Biden as his running mate back in 2008. So Joe Biden is highly sensitive to Putin's, bad activities and bad behavior, and understands that his career has been shaped by that, and his response to those bad behaviors in many ways defines him and his presidency now.
Now, election interference is expected to be another big issue, and this was actually front and center in the last presidential summit as well. At that time, 2018 in Helsinki, President Trump actually stated at a joint news conference that he didn't see any reason that Russia would be responsible. He essentially sided with Vladimir Putin's denial over the findings of U.S. intelligence agencies that Russia was involved. So how do you expect President Biden to address that issue today?
Well, I think it's night and day. And by the way, you had a reporter who was sort of quoting Republican critics saying Biden should not be having any kind of summit with Vladimir Putin because it only empowers Vladimir Putin. Apparently, my Republican colleagues are suffering mass amnesia because maybe the single most disastrous press conference ever held by any president of the United States was none other than their own Donald Trump in Helsinki after having had a summit with Vladimir Putin, where, as you said, Donald Trump shamelessly sided with Vladimir Putin over U.S. intelligence agencies about interference in the 2016 election. And of course, enabled, empowered, praised Vladimir Putin, got him off the hook on a lot of things, and basically presided over an administration that had all kinds of contacts with Russian officials and lied about it, as documented in the Robert Mueller report.
So, Gerry, how does Biden come back from that now? How does Biden now try to shift that?
Well, first of all, I think Vladimir Putin understands there's a new sheriff in town, and that sheriff is not going to wink and blink at violations of international law or norms, that this sheriff is going to insist, as I said earlier, in setting very strong, clearly defined boundaries, and that there will be penalties imposed if those boundaries aren't respected. It's a whole new ballgame, if I can switch my metaphors, for Vladimir Putin, and he needs to take cognizance of that.
We allow all the metaphors here, all the metaphors. But
thank you.
But I have to ask you, is there a personal element to this, do you think, given that the Russian propaganda was aimed at keeping Biden out of office?
Yeah, I think that's probably true. But Joe Biden is steeped in foreign policy, right? He spent 50 years in foreign policy as chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, as chairman of the European Affairs Subcommittee, as vice president, now as president. That is his forte. That is his love. And so he understands he's got a moment in time to try to reset the boundaries and the relationship with Russia. Find common ground when you can, yes, but also really make it very clear to the adversary that there are things up with which we will not put, and that there will be consequences that flow from that. And so I think Biden is seized with a mission, and I think he's up to this mission.
And you mentioned common ground. That is something that Joe Biden said he was hoping to find with Vladimir Putin during this summit. What are some of the areas where you think they can come together?
Well, I'll give you one that hasn't been mentioned so far, and that's the Iran nuclear agreement, right? So the United States, after trying to recover from Trump's disastrous unilateral pullout of a nuclear agreement that was in full compliance, Russia is one of the 5 parties to that agreement. And so having Russian cooperation in resetting and reestablishing the nuclear agreement with Iran is a common goal we share. And so that's an area, a very critical area, where I think we could cooperate. You've mentioned earlier, of course, the environment and climate change. Russia is a party to the Paris Climate Accord, which, again, Trump disastrously and unilaterally pulled us out of, and President Biden has put us back in. So there's cooperative opportunity there. And then, of course, space. We are cooperating and have cooperated for years in space in running the International Space Station, but also cooperating in other space endeavors. So there are a lot of scientific endeavors where we can cooperate, and I think they could be expanded upon, no question.
So would you like to see a prisoner swap today to secure the release of the Americans, Trevor Reed and Paul Whelan?
I would. I think from a humanitarian point of view, that would be a good thing, and it would be a gesture. But
Gerry,
remember
I just want to point out that we're seeing President Biden right now leaving the Via Lagrange, getting in his car, presumably heading to a holding area now, where he will then prepare for his press conference as we wait to hear from the president on how he thinks this summit went today. And again, Joe Biden there just getting into the car, and we expect to see the Russian president very soon as well. Congressman Connolly, you can go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just wanted to draw everyone's attention to the fact that we're now seeing President Biden leaving that summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin.
And we certainly look forward to hearing both perspectives on what happened. You asked about would I like to see a prisoner swap? Yes, I would, for humanitarian reasons. And I would point out that that's not unique, right? So the West and the United States in particular, for the entire duration of the Cold War, engaged in prisoner swaps, some of them public, some of them private, with the then Soviet Union. So there's a long tradition of doing this. What we have to guard against, though, is rewarding bad behavior. We don't want Russia to get the idea that they can arrest Americans or others on their territory on trumped-up charges, almost holding them hostage, and we're willing to exchange guilty parties who have engaged in really serious and bad behavior. We're willing to do that sort of unquestionably. We're not. And I think you were pointing out the uneven nature of the charges involved here. But having said all of that, there's a humanitarian aspect to this that we can't ignore and that we care about.
All right, Congressman Gerry Connolly, great to have you, Congressman. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.